Welcome to There She Is, the podcast by Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania. This is a space for celebrating women in sport, the athletes, coaches, administrators, volunteers, and leaders who shape our sporting communities. We talk pathways, visibility, lived experience, and what works for women in sport right here in Tasmania and beyond, because representation matters and every story deserves to be seen. Welcome everybody, it's Philippa here from Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Zali with us today, who is an expert in body image. We all know that body image is one of the main reasons that our adolescent girls are dropping out of sport, so we are so grateful to have you with us today and pick your brain and share some of your knowledge.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thank you.
Now, you're one of the founding members of the Embrace Collective. So there's you and Taran Brumfitt, who have done incredible things. So for those who aren't familiar with your work, can you tell us in a bit of a nutshell what you're all about?
Yeah. So the Embrace Collective is a health promotion charity that is in Australia, but we kind of are operating globally now. And our whole aim is to just really operate at the health promotion level to just make small changes to kind of settings and spaces so that young people in particular can feel better about their bodies. And we do this in all of the places where young people live, learn and play. So there's things for schools and there's things for homes and parents and families. But one of the places that we really love to work is in the sporting setting, because this is a space where there are just so many opportunities to make particularly women and girls feel really welcome and safe and included. That's going to really keep them participating and retain them and just keep them playing sport for longer.
Amazing. That's exactly what we all want, is more girls staying in sport for longer. Was there any part of your journey growing up participating in sport where body image came up as an issue for you?
Yes. So it's a great question. I have this visceral feeling of, the old school netball skirts with all the pleats and the little, the zipper and the Velcro, right? And there were these three components to keeping the skirt on. But if the zipper didn't reach the little zipper connector thingy, then it was very hard to get your skirt to fit. And so I just have this visceral feeling because I was in a larger body growing up and it was hard to get the skirt. It was hard to find the skirt in the right size. It's hard to get it to fit and feel comfortable. And so I just am really passionate about some of the work that we do today around creating more inclusive and flexible uniforms, because it is such a huge barrier to girls really wanting to get out there. And, I just think we need to remember the context of put yourself in the place of a 12 or 13-year-old girl. So your body is changing. It's probably different from what it was last week or last season. And then you're out in this space where everyone is watching you. And we're like, okay, now do crazy things with your body, jump and leap and make it jiggle. And, what we make them wear to do that is so critical, because it can be the difference between people feeling really comfortable to be vulnerable and take risks and put it all out there on the court or field or whatever it is. And, feeling like they can't move at all, because a lot of girls in the research that we've done in this space tell us that they feel exposed or they feel vulnerable or, and thinking about the skirt. I mean, skirts, I just think, why do we need them for sport? But anyway, they flip up all the time. And so there's this feeling of showing more than you plan to, or there's so much that's going on there that if we could eliminate kind of all of those insecurities and concerns just about what we're wearing, I just imagine how much more girls could actually just be able to focus on the game and what they're actually doing rather than what they look like.
Absolutely. I know a lot of clubs have done some things with colouring, they've typically had white uniforms. There's been changes to change the colour. Have you seen any other really good examples of sports who have made some tweaks other than colour?
Yeah, I think, there's been some great sort of high profile situations where athletes have sort of taken a stand or, just said they're not competing. There was a team of gymnasts who wore leggings under their uniform. There was the women's handball. I just think sometimes the uniform is kind of one of those things that's like, this is the way that it's always been done, and this is just the way it is. And it is something that is open to change if enough of the athletes use their voice to say something about it. And I think most of the time people assume, when it comes to uniforms, they kind of assume that their own body is the problem, not that the uniform is the problem. And so there's a lot of work that we can do to actually encourage girls and athletes to come together and just say, you know what, we could really have something different. But one of the main things that would be much easier to change is just having flexibility. It's like, it's not about making everyone wear the same thing all the time, because if girls could choose, yep, you can wear leggings underneath the shorts, or you can wear, bike pants, or whatever it is that makes them feel comfortable. That's what's going to make them feel comfortable. Whereas often in a team setting, they'd ask one or two girls, what would you like? We did some work as swimming at some point, and they were like, well, we asked the girls and they wanted the really high cut swimmers. And I was like, which ones did you ask? Because there must have been some others on there that didn't want that. And if everyone can actually choose what makes them feel comfortable, that's where we'll see the big difference, rather than continuing to sort of be really strict around what we're getting girls to wear.
Yeah, that flexibility is such a great idea. Like, you sometimes see that where they might have a singlet or a t-shirt option, which is a great start. What about, like swimming? Are there limited options, swimming or gymnastics, when they need to be streamlined, or how do you sort of navigate those conversations?
Yeah, and there are sometimes rules about these things for different sports, and there are sometimes, but it's about working, I guess, within the parameters of what we can change. And I think that just saying to girls that they could wear, like boy leg swimmers, or they can wear the bottoms they can choose and the tops have to be a certain color. I think it's just about reframing or rethinking the way that we sort of prescribe uniforms, and thinking about having alternatives that should be more possible now within, manufacturing and all of the things. But there just should be more possibility. It's like, if it's the same color on the bottom, then maybe that's okay, and then the top is the same or something. I just think we need to get creative.
Yeah. Do you think the girls sometimes might struggle to speak up, and how much do we, as the adults and the leaders, need to drive that conversation and get their opinions again? Like, what's the sort of research saying about how they're communicating either way?
Yeah, I think we've done great things in Australia in particular with like athlete voice, and ensuring that we have youth participation across, lots of different spaces, but particularly in sport. I do find, though, it's probably the ones who are more confident who are speaking up. So there will be a range of people who are not. And I think usually it would be the parents that would know that there's an issue and that could encourage girls to speak up. And so, yeah, it's a team effort, I guess, in terms of getting young people's perspectives to be seen in that environment.
The parents is a great avenue here, in terms not just about uniform, but they can see the body language at home and around the sport of when they are feeling comfortable or they're not. As a parent, when you start to see a shift in your child's confidence, particularly around their body, what are some do's and don'ts that can really help us in that time?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And parents often sort of think, we tend to find parents will say, oh, social media is, all of these things. And it's like, yes, social media has an influence on young people's body image, but actually parents have a much more foundational impact, particularly, before young people sort of turn 12 or 13. Parents are really the main influence on their young people's, development of how they feel about their body, and what they think about the importance of appearance as well. So I think parents need to realize that they do have a big impact. One of the main things that we tell audiences everywhere, whenever we're speaking to anyone who could potentially be a parent, is that they should start to become more aware of the things they say about their own bodies and other people's bodies. So in general, we just say less about bodies and appearance, because as a parent, if you are criticizing your own body, if you're saying that you should do this or that to change your body, kids pick up on that. right from an early age. And it's one of the, you know, that sort of role modeling can really make a big difference. But also if parents are sort of commenting on other people's bodies, or if there's some judgment or some criticism there, kids tend to internalize that, and that's what they kind of hear, that critical voice in their own head. And so all of those things make a big difference. So that's just like in general baseline kind of operations as a parent. But when we're talking about starting to see their young person maybe making some negative comments about their body, or feeling self-conscious, or pulling the skirt down over their legs, I think that's something, that you can just start to notice, and just ask really open-ended, curious questions about how they're feeling in general. And you don't sort of have to direct it towards their body, but just getting young people to open up and talk about it is one of the most helpful things. And it's always, I just think about that car ride on the way home is about like, how are you feeling in your uniform? How are you feeling on the field or the court? And making sure that we're always making the point to young people that, their body is, when we're talking about bodies, we're trying to reframe and focus on what their bodies can do, rather than necessarily what they look like. And I think that's one of the most helpful things that we can help our kids to realize.
The car ride's such a good one. I hear that from parents a lot, because you're not making that direct eye-to-eye contact. So sometimes they'll open up a lot more in those types of environments, which is really cool. And I know when you're watching your conversation, maybe if you realize you've said something that's not so helpful, is it good in that moment, or even the days following, to sort of come back to that conversation and reframe? Or how can we sort of navigate when we trip up?
Yeah, and I love that, because I'm that sort of person that like 3 to 4 days later, I will have a great comeback to the point that you've made. So I think that we do need to realize that we can reflect on things and we can come back to it. And that's often some of the more powerful moments, actually, because we can say, when we were having that conversation and I said this, well, I've been thinking about it, and actually what I really wanted to tell you is, and you just get another go at the conversation and your response. And I think that just being open to like, I said the wrong thing. I made a mistake. I did all this. We're actually role modeling how we can take accountability, but also be kind to ourselves when we do make mistakes. So you kind of get a lot of benefits when you do that. And I use this strategy all the time with my kids, just to be like, you know what, I said the wrong thing, and now we can have another conversation about it. So yeah, I think it's a great one.
And is there, you talk about focusing on what your body can do and performance, and they still might want their body to be a particular way. Is there something that sort of helps with the in-between till they might mentally really get on board with, okay, it is about performance, when they're like, okay, I get it, but I'm not quite in that space of owning all of it?
Not sure. What we tend to find is that young people who only sort of evaluate their worth based on their appearance, it's like there's a very narrow definition of what is, like, in inverted commas, like the ideal in terms of the body.
Sure.
And we actually can't change our body that much. We can't change our height. And actually weight is just as genetically determined as height. So we often can't change that. We can't change shape. We can't change like different body parts and the sizes and all of those things. So by introducing the concept of appreciating what our bodies can do, the functionality, and also why that's important for us. Like, I appreciate that, my legs are really strong, and that means that I can play netball, but that means that I'm having fun with my friends. So like making the connections between all of those things, it just gives another basis on which we can form our identity and confirm our value, that just has a much broader base than appearance alone. And I just speak to so many, adult women who are like in their 40s and 50s, and they've never even thought about what their body does for them. They've always only thought about how it looks. And I guess my goal is that for the next generation, they grow up really focusing on who they are, what they're doing, in the world and what their bodies can do for them rather than just what they look like.
Yeah, it's a lot of self-work on the parent part to heal that side of themselves
Oh my gosh.
as you're teaching the kids as well.
Well, we're all doing it right. We're trying to do things for our kids in ways that may have been missing for us. And so we're, usually you open your mouth and everything your parents said will come out. But sometimes you manage to stop yourself and turn it around. So yeah, it is really healing for us as the parents as well sometimes to actually give ourselves the grace that we're trying to teach our kids to have for themselves.
And what about from like the coaches' perspectives who, really having these close conversations with the girls? Is there anything they can do to change the culture or the language or the tone of their teams that will, essentially help them stay in their sport?
Yeah. And I think this is something that's really hard. We know that the majority of coaches are volunteers and that they have all sorts of different levels of expertise in any given sport. This is, at the grassroots kind of community level. But coaches do set the tone for the team. And I think we really do need to think about how we coach girls slightly differently, not just in terms of body image, but in terms of participation and belonging and really creating that confidence. Like it's not something that you can tell girls to be confident. It's like they need to build that through the experiences of playing on the team. So the things we tell coaches, it's very similar to the things we tell parents around not making any comments on appearance at all. And that includes compliments because often coaches will say something like, oh, you're looking really fit today, or, looking great out there or something. And if it's a team setting, you just like all of the girls who hear that and then go, oh, they didn't say that to me. And that like it becomes
So
this
true.
really strange setting where it's like, well, he said that she looked so fit, but he only said like so fit to me. Like they'll compare the length of the so that because they're in this stage where everything is a comparison. So developmentally, I think it's really important that we are just trying to focus on building their like capacity and their agency on the field or court and just trying to avoid anything in relation to bodies and appearance. Yeah.
So things like you're looking really strong with it, like is that tricky? Sometimes are they borderline with you not saying you're looking really fit? Or what are some good examples of positive language in that sense?
Yeah, so I think it's about connecting it to feeling, like how you're feeling out there, like, and connecting it to like whether they're feeling good that day. Like we've had a lot of conversations with our youth crew about this, and a lot of them were talking about the fact that they wanted to be able to come to sport and sometimes not play at 100%. Like sometimes they were like, I'm tired, my body's hurting, like depending on the stage in their menstrual cycle, like, I can't give it all of my effort today, but I want to give it something. And so they wanted that to be okay. Like it's just about, I guess, allowing girls to show up and perform wherever they are in that moment, but connected in to how their body's feeling rather than kind of expecting 100% performance all the time. And really just focusing on their own goals of like whether they want to be super competitive or did you want to just have fun today? Like, and trying to bring all of that together. And it's a really hard job, but I think that there's a few things we can take out in just not saying things about appearance and then trying to build in that culture of everyone is welcome here. We're all going to try however best we can today, building in like empathy and compassion for mistakes. And that can help drive self-compassion and girls being kind to themselves, as well as that nice team culture of being kind to each other. So there's so many little layers that we can work on, but mostly just helping girls to actually feel what it feels like when they're performing at their best rather than thinking about what it looks like to perform at your best.
I love that, focusing on the feeling in there. And there's a lot more information now that sort of shows the different reasons girls participate in sport versus boys, is that, there's a group of girls who are highly competitive, but it really is much of a smaller number. And I think it's coming around more to the sense of belonging, the social participation, and, and structuring it in such a way that really supports that because, the girls' teams are interact so differently from the boys' teams and what they get out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So when we talked a little bit about social media, and I know you and Taryn have spoken before about encouraging your girls to build up, great role models in their socials. How do you have these conversations with girls about their use with social media and having the right influences in there?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time it's about giving the permission to really drive and curate your own feed. And I think,
Really intentional, yeah.
yeah, and it's sort of like just giving permission to say, you don't have to follow everyone. Like if it's making you feel bad, you can not follow that anymore. And so much of the time when we see bodies, particularly on social media, our brain makes an automatic comparison between how we think we look and how we think they look. And you can't necessarily stop that comparison from happening, but you can try to change how it makes you feel and how you let yourself feel, I guess, afterwards. Because sometimes you can, see something on social media and think, oh, I wish my, hair looked like that or whatever. And then you can spiral down into like, well, I should change all these things about myself. Or you can just, I guess, think, wow, hair looks great, and then kind of move on from that. So we do talk a lot about how girls talk to themselves and that self-talk while they are engaging with social media, but also just about really taking a moment to just, we sort of say, particularly for parents, like sit down next to your young person and both go onto your social media and just say, we're going to each unfollow or block or pause for, that thing where you can like stop them coming up for 30 days or something. We'll do that for 5 different accounts that have been making us feel bad lately. And then add in 5 different accounts that are nothing to do with appearance. And they are things that like inspire you or make you laugh or, my all-time favorite is like ducklings or animals of some sort, because all of those things just mix up the feed so it doesn't feel like such a vortex of comparison and perfection. And when they've done lots of different studies, even just encouraging that like pausing of the accounts or taking a small break, limiting time, all of these strategies make people feel better about themselves. So it's just about really keeping your mental health as the front like goal and making sure that anything that's hurting that, we take that away.
I love these really intentional ideas. Obviously, body image doesn't just naturally get better. And so I love that there's these practical tips to consciously make efforts to improve it rather than crossing your fingers.
Yeah.
But there's some nice interactions.
Yeah.
And what about for like the actual sporting clubs or sporting teams? Is there anything they can do on social media that's, obviously going to portray a more body positive environment?
Yeah. We tend to advise clubs to really consider representation, because when people are looking through their social media, they should be able to actually see a broad representation of all of the bodies that are involved, and not just the ones that are always winning and not just the ones that are, you know, necessarily within certain sizes and shapes. But we want to see all bodies, because that's going to actually encourage the young people who might be sitting at home and wishing that they could play. If they can see themselves, like literally in the social media of the club, they're going to feel like they might belong there. And so just really taking that moment to make sure that we're representing all those bodies is going to make such a big difference for recruitment and for retention as well.
And what are there other red flags that clubs, if they're looking at their overall culture and, wanting to make sure that they're stepping things up in this area, are there any sort of red flags that they might see for themselves that flag that they need to put more attention into this?
I guess what we tend to find is that actually this is not something that that people realize is a big problem. They don't tend to see problems until they become like a really big problem. Like a young person might, potentially develop an eating disorder and have to go to treatment and therefore drop out of the team. So I think there are so many things along the way that can be an issue. Probably the most obvious one that clubs might hear is around body shaming and body talk. within teams. And this can be like the athletes might be saying things about the other athletes, the coaches might be making comments, the parents might be making comments. Like there's so many different places where this body talk can happen. But it's actually quite common, and it's something that if coaches and clubs and administrators and parents can try to just say a little bit less. Like I often talk about it like it's like a swimming pool that we're all swimming in, and it's like, don't pee in the pool because the fewer things that you can say that are going to go into that soup or the pool that we're all swimming in, it's just going to be a nicer place for us to swim. The way that people feel about themselves is like this cumulative experience of life, and if there's less comments in there that kind of make them think about, make them judge or critique their own body, then they're just going to have a much smoother experience.
Yeah, I think that pause is really important before it comes out of your mouth. And also with the little lines, like I think I've heard you say something before, like we don't comment on other people's bodies. That lines that will just shut down the conversation a bit more quickly, but gently.
Yeah, and I mean, I often struggle to give like exact scripts and things because it really depends on the situation, but that's probably the most applicable one across everywhere. It's just like, we don't talk like that here. And I think that it's often people will let it slide, especially when it's like banter. So in boys, it tends to happen as like banter and joking. And then the research sort of shows that boys will tease other boys and boys will tease girls more than girls will tease girls about appearance. But whenever it does happen, shutting it down really quickly is the best way forward.
And what about for girls who are, or just people in general who are getting stuck in that comparison-itis themselves? Maybe they are seeing someone who is performing really well in the team. I know we've covered this a little bit, but is this something else that we can do to help break the cycle of comparison-itis?
Yeah. I think it is really like the whole idea of a team is that there's lots of different people with different skills. And so one of our kind of key messages is around celebrating diversity. And once you realize that actually our team is way better, we don't just have like 10 of that one person who's, they might be comparing themselves to, but actually when we have this wide variety, and when you think about teams being stronger when we have all of those differences, then it sort of gives you also permission to realize your own unique strengths and what you bring to that team. And it could be on the field, but it also can be off the field. Like if we think about the things girls value most in sport, it's their peers and having fun with their team. And so being the person that is able to cheer everyone on and lift everyone up is also like a really critical part of being on the team, not just how well you can kick a ball or catch something or throw something. So I think if we think about all of those wide skills, again, it just kind of like opens up the lens with which we're viewing ourselves and our contribution. But yeah, it's really tough because as soon as girls start to compare themselves, that is one of the things where they just don't feel like they fit anymore or they're not good enough. And that's where it's really important to sort of celebrate how fun it is to be on the team, not just whether they're winning or not.
Is there something or one thing you wish clubs or sporting organisations knew or would implement that would have one of the biggest effects?
I guess so we have some guidelines for clubs, and we've got 4 guidelines in there. So I don't know that I could ever choose one, but they're all drawn from the research in this space that suggests that if we take sometimes really small actions in these 4 areas, and that's around all the things we've talked about. So offering flexibility in uniforms, celebrating diversity and representing all bodies in terms of our club marketing, social media, but also who we're celebrating in awards and that sort of thing. The third one is banning body talk and body shaming. And the fourth is focusing on food as fuel, or just making sure that there's no kind of negative commentary around food. So I guess if we did all of those 4 things in different ways, then I think that that's what's going to create that really positive environment. But I guess if I could only choose one, I think it would be around body shaming and body commentary, because I do think that there's still a lot of things that are said quite carelessly sometimes. And actually, no, because this is really funny. We talk to audiences all the time. They're adults, right? They're in different settings. They work in different spaces. And we will say, like, did someone ever say something about your body or your appearance? And then most of them will raise their hand. And it's like that thing, they can still remember that 20, 30 years later. And they've never forgotten this thing that someone said to them. But that person probably doesn't remember saying it. Like, it's just these offhand little things that we tend to just store really deeply inside us. And so if we could kind of break that, and if that was something that just happened so much less, I just wonder how much better our clubs and spaces would feel.
I'm pretty sure everyone who's listening will remember that one thing that was said to them.
It often makes people drop out. Like, someone was telling me this story of, like, someone was commenting on, like, the hair on their legs, and so they stopped swimming. And it's like, oh, it's just such a small thing that
it is
that
the
they really took
tiniest
to heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really sad sometimes.
It really is. And then, obviously this kind of continues for a lot of people into adulthood because we haven't dealt with it, or we're still commenting in ways. What do you say to women in their 30s and 40s, or any age really, that are not in that adolescent age, but maybe their body image is holding them back from participating in sport?
Yeah, I guess a lot of it is all of the same kind of advice, but one of the main things that comes through as we start to get older is a real sense of being kind to your body, and kind of being kind to yourself about your body, because when we're expecting, like, perfection, your body basically gets further and further away from that as you get older. And so we often talk to adult women around self-compassion, and also appreciating what their bodies do for them. And that's one of the things that as you get older, you tend to be able to appreciate more and more, particularly as women go through potentially, having children and realizing what their body enables them to do in that sense. There tends to be this, like, increase in just the awe and amazement at the things that your body can actually achieve.
Yeah.
And that helps us to divert some of the attention away from appearance. But yeah, this is something that so many people have some deep, deep wounds about, and some real insecurities. And it's something that most of the women that I speak to, they just really don't want to pass those things on to their kids. And it gives us sort of that second chance at healing some of those things so that we're not passing them on.
I know from my own experience, I have a boy and then two girls. And then once I had my second girl and I realized the conversations that were coming out in my mind, I was exercising. I was like, hang on, I don't want this to be part of her conversation. So, and that's when I really started to focus on changing my own. So, but yeah, it's interesting how it goes back and forward. And, the amazing thing of being a parent and creating a human like in your body. And it's an interesting cycle that I'm sure you've dived all the way through.
Yeah, and it can be tricky at first to sort of stop yourself from saying things, and just being aware of it even is a great first step. But I often say to people, like, if you start to, my kids would always, like, squish my belly and be like, oh, why is this so squishy? And, there's so many opportunities there for you to, like, say something self-deprecating, or, say that, oh, it's good because I had you in there. But if you can just I talk about, like, the Red Riding Hood approach, which is like, all the better to cuddle you with because it makes you nice and cuddly. Or, if you can think about the kind of positive functional outcome or opportunity that part of your body gives you, then you can start off saying the thing that's coming out of your mouth, but then turn it around halfway through. And that's always great to practice.
All right. Now, you have so many amazing resources that are available, and you've got the Activate Playbook, which clubs might like to tap into. I'll share the link and everything in the show notes here, but can you tell us what the Activate Playbook's all about?
Yeah, so this was just a way to kind of bring together all of the things that the research suggests might be a good idea in order to help people feel better in their bodies in ways that mean that they will keep participating in sport. So we have the playbook, which really just turns all of those guidelines into, it's basically check boxes and examples so that clubs can do that. We also have the masterclass, which we feature the amazing Libby Trickett, and that really talks through those 4 guidelines, but with like visual examples, case studies from clubs, so that it sort of makes everything feel a little bit more doable. And that's, I think it's like 18 minutes long. So it's like a short watch, and there's lots of great content in there. The other thing that we have is we worked with Sport Integrity Australia on some resources specific to body shaming. And those are some of the first in the world to really just address this topic like front on. So there's lots of fact sheets, there's some more short videos there. There's actually like a short video for young people themselves, as well as a video for coaches, and then some materials to help people use those videos. So it's something that we kind of put everything into on the website, into a suite, into a portal, just because there are so many different things that pop up in sport that then administrators and clubs and coaches are like, how do we deal with this? And so we've tried to just give everyone everything. And so those CM materials are on the Sport Integrity Australia website. Activate stuff is on our website, and we're just always also really open to hearing from clubs, coaches, administrators, and working with different sports to potentially do some more research in this space, or to create the sorts of materials that might be helpful. So we always want to hear about the things that people need.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I know, volunteers are really stretched in a lot of spaces, but this could be a nice role for, one of the parents who maybe isn't doing other roles, but wants to take on something small and can work through this little checklist to support the club. Who do you typically see sort of runs the lead with the playbook?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it can be anyone, and there's usually just someone who will champion this. And it's often not the president because they've got lots of other things that they're thinking about. But this is something that a parent can pick up and pass on, or pick up and then start to sort of, I guess, make small changes and adjustments, even just for their own way that they show up at the club, or to start to kind of try to filter this out through the club. But it's just something that, there's some really practical small things that we could do that aren't necessarily hard or expensive, and they're going to make clubs feel so much more safe and welcoming, particularly for women and girls. And so I would just love to see anyone who's particularly passionate about this to take the resources and materials and just give it a go.
Yeah, and I can imagine it's almost always well received by the clubs of someone who wants to run with it.
Yeah. So we've seen all sorts of things. We've seen clubs sometimes will put some of the parts of the playbook into their like coaching manual. We see them sometimes showing some of the videos in orientation things. People want to use things in all different ways. So we just made little pieces that can be picked up and put anywhere. But I think the key thing is doing something. And doing something is way better than nothing.
Now, just to finish off, what makes you most hopeful about the future for women and girls in sports?
I've been to so many events and things around the world recently, actually, where there's just so much excitement around women and girls sport. And I just think that this feels like a particularly it feels like a really momentous time to be involved. And I just hope that some of that does translate to the girls themselves, because I think the people who are most excited about it are women our age who never had all of these opportunities when we were younger. And so I just hope that girls, it's like we don't necessarily need them to realize that this is a really special time. We kind of want them to know that this is normal, that they can actually play any sport they want and go through to professional level or just be completely recreational. So I think it's just really exciting to see how this becomes normalized, and also what ends up happening when this many people are this excited around women and girls sport.
I love seeing everyone's face light up after this question. I think you're right. There is something happening that's going to be a big trigger. So it's very much watch this exciting space.
Yes, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. If you would love to tap into any of these resources, then we'll put it in the show notes here, but go check out the Embrace Collective. There's books, there's a documentary, there's all sorts of things, and we really love what you're doing. So thank you so much for your time, and let's hope the future continues to change and clubs are able to implement all these little small things that will compound over time.
Amazing. Thank you.
If this episode resonated with you, if you believe in visibility, representation and strong pathways for women in sport, we invite you to join us. Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania is a growing community of state sporting bodies, clubs, women and allies working together to make sport more inclusive, connected and supportive across our state. By becoming a WSRT member, you're helping amplify women's voices, stories and leadership, both on the field and behind the scenes. Head to wsrt.org.au/membership to learn more about becoming a member. Because when we can see women in sport, we can be them.